Hello, everybody. Welcome back once more to another supplemental review video with Mr. McDowell and Mr. Simpson. Today, we're looking at your chief complaint of Unit 3, which was comparative belief systems. And we're going to be focusing on two faiths especially here. Simpson?
So today we're going to really quickly hit the breakdown between Sunni and Shia Islam, and then we will also later on talk about Christianity as well.
Yep. And so the key thing here is this unit is where the divide between Sunni and Shia really comes to the forefront because there are, of course, three great Islamic empires of this period, the Gunpowder Empires. The Mughals have their own issues that we'll talk about in a little bit in this video, but the great Shia or Shiite empire of this era is the Safavids, based in what is now Iran. And the great Sunni empire, indeed, they claim the title of Caliph, successor of Muhammad, the rulers do, is the Ottoman Empire located in the modern Middle East, Turkey, and at this point in time, North Africa as well. So Simpson, as the AP Human Geo teacher, will be the one to be explaining the religious difference between these two, and then I'll jump in with some of the historical stuff that went down after that. So take it away, Jay.
Yeah, so when we consider the difference between the split of Sunni and Shia, one of the biggest issues is succession. And what we start to recognize is the leadership or the caliphs of the Islamic faith. It's really a question of who is the rightful person to continue that position or that title. So what makes the difference is the bloodline itself of Muhammad. And after Muhammad's death, sorry, my cat is like picking on me. After that, we recognize that there's a large concern over the bloodline. Shia Muslims largely argue that the next rightful heir or the successor to the caliph should be of the bloodline of Muhammad himself. The problem is that there was not really a continuation of that bloodline, where you have a son-in-law who kind of takes over for the procession, and then over time you have cousins and things like that. So it just gets really murky, where Sunni Muslims argue that their rightful caliph should be more of an outspoken, a very prominent, very proud Muslim who is very dedicated to the expansion of the faith and is very devout in their practices, and knows how to lead Muslims in the teachings of the Quran and Sharia law and things like that. So that's what really exacerbated the split, was the concern of the bloodline and the rightful heir moving forward.
And what happened to deepen this split historically is what started out as a disagreement over succession, of course, deepened and became much more than that. Disagreements over rituals, disagreements over even political policy. And the vast majority of Muslims on the planet today are Sunni. However, the big exception to that is Iran. Iran is the largest Shia majority country on the planet, and that comes directly from the empires of this unit, which brings this conversation full circle. The Iranians, the Persians, become kind of militantly Shia, kind of, we're Shia, we're proud to be Shia, and they indeed have no tolerance for Sunni Islam pretty much from the word go in the Safavid Empire. The result of that is an almost entirely Shia state that identifies as the one Shia state during this time period. Them and the Ottomans fight these frequent and often violent wars on their mutual border, and the result is that Islam, which was in theory supposed to be a unitary faith, has been really badly split ever since the Ottomans and Safavids continually fought one another. Speaking of splitting faiths, the other big religion of Unit 3 is, of course, Christianity, which does, at this point in time, experience the Protestant Reformation and the subsequent splitting of the Catholic Church. Now, the church had split before in the late 1000s, what's called the Great Schism, which created what we call Catholicism and what we call Greek Orthodox or Eastern Orthodox Christianity. But we really focused heavily on the Protestant Reformation. Now, for reasons that are too complicated to go too far into, just roll with it. We actually looked at this in Unit 5 as kind of a precursor to the scientific revolution, and thus as a precursor to the Enlightenment, and thus as a precursor to the revolutions, the political revolutions of Unit 5. But chronologically, the Protestant Reformation takes place during this time period, and it represents the Catholic Church splitting apart. I'll let Simpson handle the details on that one as well.
Yeah. So really, the split, again, with the chronological situation, two big characters that kind of come to mind is Martin Luther, and then we have Henry VIII and his sweetheart situation going on there. But with Martin Luther, of course, we're looking into the issues going on in Germany. We know, of course, his 95 Theses that he nails to the door of his church in Wittenberg, challenging his local friar. Really big situation for the selling of indulgences, the mistrusts, the mismanagement of money, the lies told to people that as long as they pay their indulgence, they would be fast tracked to heaven and salvation and cat, all of that. So that really prompted the push for the Lutheran establishment. We know, of course, Martin Luther will have his 95 Theses mass produced by the printing press, which will be kind of a vital tool there at that time. But that also instigates mistrust in other regions of Europe. And largely what we bring in is Henry VIII's situation, where Henry, of course, wants his heir to the throne. He's very, very fearful of death and not leaving behind a successor, which again kind of is unique in the pattern when we look at that with the Sunni and Shia split, the succession. So we have for Henry VIII his quest, if you will, not to be too Monty Python about it, but his quest for an heir to the throne and a wife who will bear that for him, which leads to his stories of his 6 wives, which I'm not going to go into detail with because, again,
you already did.
Yeah.
And yeah, so those of you who are sitting here watching this, maybe going, well, okay, McDowell, that's all well and good, but what on earth does this have to do with the development of politics? This is from Unit 3. This is for states. What are we talking about? Well, what happens is, much more so than in our modern world, states become identified by their faith. And you wind up with, of course, England, which starts out Protestant, less because of big theological things and more because of Henry VIII not or wanting a divorce and thus splitting from the Catholic Church. You wind up with an England that identifies itself as almost militantly Protestant, very anti-Catholic in its policy. You wind up with the Ottomans considering themselves the center of true Islam and having to fight not only Christians on their borders, but also these Shia heretics in their eyes to the east. You, of course, have the Shia Muslims of Safavids fighting against other Islamic empires, less so the Mughals and more so the Ottomans, but that still happens. Which brings us to one last thing with belief systems, and that is the Mughals, who operate under this very odd system wherein they are an Islamic minority ruling over a Hindu majority. And this is the time period where Sikhism becomes a thing, where some gurus in northern India try to merge Hindu traditions and Muslim traditions. We're already running long and we don't have time to get into all of the fine details of Sikhism, but understand that it represents something that you're going to see a lot in this course, specifically religious syncretism. You're going to want to have at least a couple syncretism examples tucked away in your pocket in case you get a religion DBQ. Voodoo, African interpretations of Islam, and Sikhism all represent, from 3 very different, very wide-ranging corners of the globe, they all represent that syncretism, and they're great facts to have. I don't have anything further. Jay, anything?
Solid.
All right, so remember, in this era, more so than any other era, okay, not more so than in any other era, but way more so than in our modern era, you wind up with states identifying by not only their ethnicity, but also their religion. And you need to have some examples of states and their religions and their considerations thereof. One last caveat, Sikhism was never the majority religion of the Mughal Empire. Please do not put that. Mm-hmm. All right. I believe that is all for today. We'll see you later.
Cheers.